procrastinating on this topic long enough, so I hope you guys are ready because it's mat time! Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Generation Millennium. I'm your originally paired host, Jeffro of Madness, and we are finally on the topic of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. I can't say when I last left off, there's no episode for this. But I'm finally doing a podcast based on Pokemon Scarlet and Violet because it's been, how long now? About 8 months, give or take, since these games came out. So I say it's about time that I got down to business on discussing these games because, oh boy, there's quite a lot to unpack, and this is before DLC, mind you. And there's just a lot to just talk about this game, like the fact that this is like Pokemon's first introduction for a complete open world for the mainline games, if you don't want to include Legends Arceus on that list, considering that's technically a side game if you want to call it that. It's technically part of the main franchise because it includes new Pokemon and all that stuff, but for the most part it's more of a side game than anything since it deviates from the traditional Pokemon formula, which is now highly questionable what the formula is anymore. And if for those of you who know me, low vision, all that, I was apprehensive about this because if you've seen me play Legends Arceus and the few videos I have of Scarlet and Violet, yeah, this game is not low vision friendly. To that end, I mean, as long as I have the navigation abilities, then I can navigate the game just fine. But without them, let's just say the beginning portion of the game when Scarlet and Violet first came out, I was seeing the message of you managed to scramble your way back to shoreline, maybe like over 1,000 times because I kept falling into the water. Makes me really wish to those older days when, like, if you can't go into the water, there'd just be an invisible barrier that just stops you from entering, like in most RPGs, but nope, in this game, there's no barrier, instead you just drown. How vexing. But I understand they can't program that stuff in, but still irritating. But open world issues aside, there's a whole lot to unpack in Scarlet and Violet. Like the first thing that pretty much any players usually do once the game goes through its intro cutscenes and whatnot. I mean, the first thing that Scarlet and Violet actually did that was surprising was that we got trainer animation. We got trainer customization at the very beginning of the game, which was definitely a surprise. Like, I think it's something that a lot of games do now. Like, I remember when Hogwarts Legacy came out, one of our friends on the Discord server decided to stream themselves playing it. Oh yeah, they spent a lot of time in the trainer customization screen, and so did I, as a matter of fact. In fact, what you see on screen is pretty much what I chose as my default character at the very beginning, next to the whole Uva Academy symbol there, or Neuralgia Academy if you're playing in Scarlet. I decided to buy Violet first because, well, between the two colors, I prefer Violet over Scarlet. And after that, you just go through the opening cutscene stuff, and all that stuff is done. The first thing that, as I was going to say, when people boot up the game, is they're going to hop into the menu and change up the things, because normally the game is set to like normal speed. By default, battle style is going to be set to switch style. Animations are always going to be turned on. And the volume is usually going to be set at a certain volume, so players like to adjust those numbers and stuff to suit their needs, especially if they're going to do something like a Nuzlocke or something or other. They're going to switch their battle style to set, so the prompt of do you wish to switch out your Pokemon does not constantly keep popping up, because that just wastes time. And of course, they usually turn off animations because that also wastes time. But for some bizarre reason in Scarlet and Violet, the animation, well, just those two things I mentioned, like the ability to turn off animations and change your battle style, they're completely absent in the menu. At first we thought it was a bug or something, but as of right now, those features have not been brought back in. They're just they're by default always on, which really ticked off a lot of people, myself included, because having to constantly have that prompt that would just ask you if to trap Pokemon is rather annoying. On top of which, the fact just the speed at which the Pokemon switch out of battle is very slow. Even after this day, it's still slow compared to past games. Like, if you can turn on like Pokemon Red, Blue, Yellow on your like old Game Boy, Game Boy Color, the fact that those games switch off Pokemon faster than this game does, that is rather embarrassing in my opinion. But beyond that, going through the opening cutscenes and all that stuff, just the fact how the game began, although I will shamefully admit that when the game first came out, it took me about an hour to just walk up from my house to Nemona's place because I didn't understand the fact that you can just go straight down. Well, it's not like a directly straight, but essentially just follow the path straight forward and you get to Nemona's house. Essentially that way. I didn't understand that particular feature, so I was wandering around the town for quite a while trying to just figure out where to go, and that was not a fun time. But after all you choosing your starter and all that stuff, I decided to choose Quaxley for my starter because I usually like to begin a new game in a new region with the water starter. Like in Kanto, I went with Squirtle, with Johto, Totodile, and I chose Mudkip. Sinnoh, I chose Piplup. Unova, I went with Oshawott. Kalos, I went with Froakie. Alola, what was it called again? Oh yeah, Popplio. And in Galar, I went with Sobble. So of course with Paldea, I decided to choose Quaxley. I mean, I eventually got both games, and I could trade with the people, so I did eventually get all 3 starters on my team, but that's eventually. But I was actually surprised when the game came out, and a few things were already beginning to leak when the game did come out, like the fact that we confirmed that the main Paldea Pokedex is going to consist of only 400 Pokemon, which, again, was going to be surprising because I was one of those people who like to peek at certain aspects of the game, and then pretty much when we just count the number of new Pokemon coming in, it's like, okay, yeah, Pokemon's going to enter the national dex of over 1,000 Mons, so that's going to be something. So I figured that the regional dex would probably be boosted to 500 so they can get as many more of the older and new Pokemon together simultaneously, but nope, just 400, which for the casual fan, I suppose 500 would have been a bit much, but even 400 is still a bit much. But even still, like just the fact that the whole overworld is just now full of Pokemon just running around doing this and that, I can't see squat in terms of that kind of thing. But hey, if they aggro on me, decide to run at me, I'm not going to complain too much. Although the fact the whole open world aspect, the way they implemented Sword and Shield was terrible. Like I always complain, like, can't you give us a compass or something so we know which direction we're running in? Or at least the map gets like more interactive and it can assist with telling us which way to run into. Thankfully with Scarlet and Violet, they actually made the map more interactive. Like it turns around in circles and it usually is directed in the direction that you're actually facing in the actual game. So it's kind of like a compass in that respect, although you can set it to just be a set map. Although there's also the mini map in the bottom right corner of the screen. And on the main map, where you can open by pressing the Y button, you can then pin locations and destinations and all that stuff. If it weren't for that, I would have been lost in this game like forever. I'm so glad I added all this stuff into the game, because without it, I again would have been lost for forever. However, I also learned something that's rather irritating, because in past games, as soon as you enter a location, they register on your map and you can fly there once you have the ability to fly. Although in this game, I think you just have the fast travel fly as soon as you finish the opening tutorial at the Academy in Mesa Gosa. But unfortunately, that takes like half an hour to get through, so that's gonna be a little annoying. The opening tutorial for Pokemon has always been irritatingly annoying, which is why anyone who attempted speedruns of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, they pretty much agreed that they just skip the opening tutorial and the speedrun officially begins pretty much in Mesa Gosa once you finish all the opening tutorials, since it takes like half an hour and pretty much everyone's run is like going to be the exact same up to that point. Especially since like there's like a lot of story events that go on, like you leave your house, you get your starter, you battle Nemona, Then you go to Poco Path to get the catching tutorial. You meet the Boxer Legendary, who essentially is going to act as also your ride Pokemon, who's going to just carry you around the region. From there, you head to Los Patos. You head to Mesa Gosa, where you learn about terrestrialization, and then you go through the Academy registration orientation ceremony, and then you're essentially just told to be on your way. You can just do whatever you want in the main story. But before you even get to the main story, oh boy, there's a whole lot to unpack. But just the fact that when you get to cities, if you want to register them on your map, you need to actually touch the Pokemon Center specifically, not just enter the city. Which for me, in my case, I reached the town of Alfornado, I think that's pronounced it, the Psychic Gym in the bottom left corner. I reached the city, I did the gym, then I left, and then the post-game, I tried to fly back there and I couldn't, and that's when I realized it's because I never touched a Pokemon Center, so it never officially registered on my map even though I did all the story stuff there, so that was annoying. That means I had to run back there the old-fashioned way, which meant just jumping across the mountain ranges again. But after that, as I said, you learn about terrestrialization, like outside Mesa Gosa, which is kind of mean of the game to like just cheese the functions here, because like the Mono just like tosses a terrestrialized, I think it's Palmy at you, and so if you chose a Quaxley as your starter like I did, then you might be at a bit of a disadvantage, but you know, open world, getting lost kind of thing. I was lost in the outskirts of South Province Area 1 for maybe like a couple hours, and I was just having my Quaxley defeat a ton of Pokemon with the auto battle method. You can now just press the R button to send your Pokemon to auto battle mode. They just automatically defeat Pokemon for you. And while it doesn't gain as much experience points as if you were to battle in the old-fashioned way by like just touching the ball Pokemon or throwing your Pokemon out into battle via ZR. That's how you enter battle the old-fashioned way. You gain more experience that way, in which if you do the R button auto battle method, you get less experience, but considering I was stuck out there in the area for like a couple hours just doing auto battle, my Quaxley gained a ton of levels, so I had no problem with Palmy, even if it was terrestrialized with a stab, Thunder Shock, and all that stuff. But speaking of Terra types, that took a while to learn because I felt the way that trying to explain terrestrialization is trying to teach someone how to pendulum summoning in Yu-Gi-Oh works. So essentially in Paldea, every Pokemon has their base types. Like say Quaxley, once it gets to final evolution, Quaquaval is like a water fighting type. You have Skeledirge, which evolves from I forgot. Oh yeah, Fuecoco, Firestarter, and then Sprigatito evolves to Meowscarada. And the starters are Grass Dark, Fire Ghost, and Water Fighting respectively, which is probably the coolest trio of Pokemon types out there because I actually like using all three starters for one reason or another. So those are the base typings, but then every Pokemon is also assigned a Terra type, in which when you terrestrialize a Pokemon, you can change them to be a completely new type, but only a singular type. And you can use that type to either gain an offensive edge or defensive maneuver in battle. Like, say for example, the Pokemon Tyranitar, who's usually a Ghost Rock type who has a 4 times weakness to fighting type moves. You could terrestrialize them into a Ghost type to remove that weakness entirely. Or you could terrestrialize them into just being pure Rock or pure Dark, which will boost the power of either of those moves even more. And speaking of boosting the power of moves, even though they are terrestrialized, Pokemon do not lose their same type attack bonus, otherwise known as Stab, when they're in battle. But if you terrestrialize them into a Terra typing of that they have, like say back to the Tyranitar, you change them to Rock or Dark Terra, then their Rock and Dark moves will gain even bigger boosted because they now have Terra Stab on top of that. But then if you terrestrialize, like say that same Tyranitar, maybe like Ghost Terra, if you use Shadow Claw, it now gains the terrestrialization boost, which is I think a little bit stronger than regular Stab, but just a little bit more. It can get a little confusing, but that's essentially how terrestrialization can work. If you want a full-on breakdown explanation, I'm pretty sure you can find lots of other sources that can probably explain it better than I did. But speaking of the auto battle method I was talking about earlier, there's also a new currency in the game known as League Points, or LP for short, You essentially earn LP by doing various things in the game. I think you earn it by defeating gym leaders, maybe, but you definitely get it from defeating or catching Pokemon in the wild. That's the main way you get LP. The other main way to get it is by interacting with Terradens, which, similar to like Max Raid battles and Sword and Shield, they're just the versions of that, except you find Pokemon who are terrestrialized in these dens instead. You earn, I think it's like 1500 LP each time you touch a Terraden. Not as much as the Raid dens and Sword and Shield, but considering there are lots of Terra raids all over the map, you can usually see them on your map. So finding enough of them and getting a bunch of LP is gonna be pretty quick. Like if you manage to find like 10 Terradens, that's already like 10,500. Wait, not 1,500. 1,500 times 10. Yeah, 10,500. Am I right? My mental math is suffering right now. I apologize. But LP is, you can use them to essentially, well, before I explain that part, first off, LP is also going to be used to buy items in the shop, so you don't have to actually use your actual money in the game. You can just spend LP instead, even though you want to save your LP for crafting TMs, because you don't earn just LP from feeding Pokemon or catching them as well. You also gain materials when you do that. Like say you defeat a Mareep, you gain some Mareep fur. You defeat a Wooper, you get some like Wooper slime. Magnemite gives you like a Magnemite screw or something. Essentially, you just gain a bunch of crafting items each time you defeat Pokemon in the wild or catch them and whatnot. You just gain these materials. And if you get enough materials and you have the recipe unlocked for the TM in your game, you can then spend LP as well as using those materials to craft more technical machines for yourself. Like say, you can create the Chilling Water TM, or maybe Steel Beam. There are the Elemental Pledges, the typical moves you would expect, like Ice Beam, Thunderbolt, Flamethrower, stuff like that. They're all TMs, and Scarlet Violet has a ton of TMs. I think it's like 176 or so there's a lot of them, which also includes some like move trigger moves and stuff from the past. They've decided to just turn them into TMs to save themselves some trouble. But some of them can require easy materials, while others can be a bit more rare. Like the most infamous of them all is like Nasty Plot, because that requires you to have Spiritomb parts, which Spiritomb is not all that common, so that one can be a bit annoying to grind for. But that's essentially the main usage by LP. And defeating wild Pokemon and all that stuff. Let's see. Sorry, I'm just kind of looking down at this little list of blueprints I have on this. No, not blueprints. Bullet points I have on this little Word doc over here. Just making sure. Oh yeah, one more thing that's in the game, since we're on the topic of wild Pokemon, are outbreaks also return from Legends Arceus. And you essentially can see them on your map, and the game will alert you when you enter an outbreak area. It'll say like, hey, you reached an area that has like a bunch of blah 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 outbreak in this vicinity. Like my most recent one, I came across an outbreak of Bombardier, which was interesting. I didn't find any shiny Bombardier, but I did take a lot of them down to get a bunch of LP and Bombardier parts. So that was nice to have because they're usually not all that easy to locate. And trust me, since like a lot of the TMs can cost a lot of LP, like 8,000 ish for like the usual like standard ones that you would use in battle, you can end up using LP very, very quickly. So it's a good idea to save as much of them as you can, maybe like hundreds of thousands, which may sound like a lot, but trust me, you will want to save them up as much as possible, just like you save your money. And speaking of money, you typically earn that from defeating trainers and whatnot, but in Scarlet and Violet, trainer battles are optional in the wild. I mean, if you go to like all the story related stuff, those are required, but all the trainers you would see like out in the like just on all these different sections of the game, which I would have about to call them routes, but there are no longer routes in this game. Instead, they just separate the game into provinces. And so, I mean, you've encountered a trainer you never defeated yet because they just have a text box above their name, which makes them very easy to spot. You can battle them, gain some experience if you want for your Pokemon and stuff like that, earn a little bit of money. But for the most part, you can just avoid these trainers. They no longer force you to battle them upon being spotted, which is a nice change in my opinion. A lot of people also agree because it just makes traveling between towns much faster and less less of a hassle. But speaking of the map, I should have mentioned earlier, Paldea is essentially divided into 4 sections: the north, east, west, and south provinces, which then are separated even further into a bunch of areas. Like North Province has like 3 or 4-ish areas divided into. East Province has, I think, like 3 areas. West Province also has like 3 or 4 areas. South Province, on the other hand, has the most, I think, like 6 or 7 areas to split into for some reason. But yeah. And then let's see. Oh yes, the Pokemon Summary page. That's probably one of the biggest changes that's in this game, because a lot of the innovations that introduced in Pokemon games just typically like to get tacked on, and one of the main things from like Legend Arceus was definitely kept in this game and other games, like even saying like Let's Go. Like you no longer need to find like a name raider at a Pokemon Center or some other random town. You can now just go into a Pokemon Summary page, and on the first screen that essentially just shows all the main stuff, like the Pokemon's type or the Terra type, trainer name, trainer ID number, experience points, and all that stuff. Essentially, the summary page in Scarlet Violet is split into 3 pages. So the first one, I think you can press the X button and it allows you to change your Pokemon's nickname as much as you want, as long as you're the original trainer. But if it's a traded Pokemon in the same language, you can only change the nickname once and only once. Once you change it, it's changed forever. And you cannot change it back or undo it or anything. So you be pretty careful about that. But if it's a Pokemon that you trade that's from a different language, unfortunately, those nicknames cannot be changed. Which is a little disappointing, but not the worst. I mean, it's a foreign language, so it's not like you're going to have to worry about seeing like the worst name imaginable. And this time around, if you get a Pokemon that's traded to you, and even from like the same language, you'll know it's traded because there'll be a tag in the bottom corner next to the name that has like the language tag. For English, it's like ENG, Japanese, GPN, Chinese, CHS for simplified, or CHT for traditional, KOR for Korean, FRE for French, GER for German, ITA Italian, SPA Spanish, and there might be more, but I can't think of any more off the top of my head. And I believe you also press the A button on the first summary page, that you can also change the Pokemon's held item by selecting the item from your bag. So that's a nice thing to do, so you don't have to keep going to your bag manually. You can just do so within the confines of your summary. And then you go to the second or the middle page that shows you all information in terms of like your Pokemon's moves, their ability, and their stats, all nicely placed into just one main screen now, because in like Sword and Shield, the stats and ability went on their own page, and then the attack moves that they have are placed onto another screen right next to it. So the fact they decided to squeeze them onto a single screen was nice. And if I press an A button, you can open up a menu that allows you to do anything you want. You can like change the order of Pokemon's moves. You can teach them an old move that they may have learned, which is nice. You can just teach them their moves, switch them around as you please. And what's even more so, if you forget a move, even if it's a TM move, normally you'd have to use a new TM to relearn that move. But now in Scarlet and Violet, if you're, let's say I taught my starter Quaxley how to use like I'm not sure if I can learn it, but let's say you learn like Chilling Water as a TM, and then I decide to forget Chilling Water to teach it its signature move Aqua Step later on. However, since I already used the Chilling Water TM on it, I could then just go into the menu and then reteach Chilling Water without having to use another TM. And I can do it as many times as I want, as far as I'm aware. But it only works for that one Pokemon specifically, not for all Quaquaval you would have in your PC boxes. So be mindful of that, so you don't end up wasting too many TMs and whatnot. But it's just nice to know that moves are still there if you ever want to move them around. And when you're in that second menu, you can also, you have to press the L button, which allows you to see the number of effort values, or EVs, that your Pokemon have. So that's a definite nice change. I just wish the IV checker was also in the summary page. And then if you head to the third screen, that just shows your Pokemon's nature and whatever ribbons and marks that your Pokemon may have. And as for marks, they've added quite a few in this game. The most notable of which that some players go for are the teeny and jumbo size marks, which Pokemon change in sizes and they can be either extremely big or extremely small. And if you talk to an NPC, I believe she has like a couple of Pachirisu standing next to her, and then next to like a star-shaped fountain in Mesagosa. I believe it's like in front of like the West Pokemon Center in Mesagosa. You talk to them, you can then just choose the Pokemon in your PC boxes, and then she'll evaluate them. And if they're the right size, then she'll give you the respective mark for that. Only problem is the chances of that happening are between values of 0 to 255, so good luck with that one. It can be rather irritating trying to get those if you're trying to hunt them. I know a particular acquaintance online who pretty much caught over 70 shiny Gardevoirs before they finally found the teeny shiny Gardevoir they were after, because it was not just Gardevoirs they were catching, it was the shiny ones that they were hunting. So yeah, that should be a good indication of just how painful those hunts can be. But beyond that, let's see, I think I talked about everything on the summary pages. Yeah, I think so. But then another thing about these games that was changed, that here is a controversial topic that I really still don't agree that much on: sandwiches. Because Game Freak apparently thought that they completely failed with implementing how they used the curry mechanic back in Sword and Shield, because, well, that was just a total flop, just trying to implement those. So to fix that particular error, they decided to just use a new food, which in this case is sandwiches, in a much more hit or miss kind of mechanic, because essentially in Scarlet Violet, if you want to do anything, you need to make a sandwich. And these sandwiches allow you to do virtually everything. Like, you would increase the amount of like normal type Pokemon you see in the wild, make a sandwich. You want to increase the amount of rewards you get from terror raids, make a sandwich. You want to do breeding, make a sandwich. You want to increase decrease your hatching time, make a sandwich. You want to earn more experience points, make a sandwich. You want a shiny hunt, make a sandwich. Virtually everything in Paldea revolves around sandwiches. You want to do anything, you have to, well, you can either make a sandwich by using ingredients, and oh my lord, the ingredients. If you ever got tired of that, hearing like Kingdom Hearts 3, this might be a good spot to find some ingredients. I bet we'll find some ingredients around here. Hope we find some ingredients around here. Yeah, if you got tired of hearing that in Kingdom Hearts 3, oh boy. And here in Scarlet Violet, ingredients, they are, I mean, you don't hear that phrase in this game, but just the sheer number of ingredients, I feel like there's like over hundreds of them, because they literally made sandwiches, and then like the realistic sense that there are infinite ways you make sandwiches, and they essentially just affect how you do things. Like the game just applies you with bread. I think the bread is always the same every time, but the ingredients you put in the middle of the sandwich can be virtually anything from like tomatoes, ham, mayonnaise, salt, sugar, pickles, vegetables, meats, rice balls. It's just like every single thing you can always think of has been stuffed into this game, and while you can stuff your bag full of all the ingredients, it's just insane, just the number of combinations you can do, because on top of that, not only did I say like which kind of categories you can make a sandwich for to increase whatever thing you want to do for, on top of that they also separate a lot of them by type. So I believe like maybe say you know like do like a dragon sandwich, I think that requires like an avocado or something. Or if you want to do like based on any other Pokemon type, you would need a specific ingredient for it, which is why there are so many combinations. But as annoying as the system is, my biggest gripe about the sandwich is just the fact they only last for half an hour, which, I mean, for the casual fan, they would probably find half an hour to be plenty of time to do whatever it is they need to do. But for those of us who are in the game for the long term, half an hour is rather minuscule. Like sometimes we want to grind for experience for more than an hour. Maybe we want to find eggs for more than an hour. Maybe we want to shiny hunt for more than an hour. But instead, each time it only lasts half an hour each time, so it just forces us to either reset our game so we don't waste our ingredients if we failed on something, or we just have to make another sandwich all over again. I really wish you could just like make multiple sandwiches at once. You can like increase the timer by increments of 30 minutes, but instead each sandwich only lasts half an hour each time. So it's a bit of a disappointment there. That's why I said like it's like a hit or miss kind of thing. But as I said earlier about sandwiches run everything, that includes Pokemon breeding, and I really despise how breeding was altered in this game. I mean, it's not the worst, but it's still annoying because how it works is that you enter a new mechanic on your main menu known as the picnics. And when you do, if you're in an area that can support picnics, like you're just out in the wild on a flat plot of land, you can set up a picnic right then and there, but you cannot do it in buildings or towns. So that's one thing that's different from curry, because you can essentially set up your curry base virtually anywhere, and even inside buildings. So I guess Game Freak thought that was unrealistic. So when you set up a picnic, you essentially summon a picnic table out of nowhere, and you toss out all Pokemon in your party out onto the picnic. And for breeding in Scarlet and Violet, essentially all Pokemon in your party are, if they are compatible, they will breed. Meaning, if you had a bunch of Pokemon, like say the Dragon Egg group, like say, or Dragon or Monster, so say something they have maybe like a Gyarados, a Charizard. Let's see who else is in that family. Maybe Haxorus? I forget if he's compatible with them. But let's say you had all three of those Pokemon in your party, and if at least one of them is female, or two of them are female, one of them was male, and they were all compatible, then you could essentially just end up getting a bunch of eggs based on the female Pokemon. But in order to receive said eggs, you need to interact with the picnic basket that's next to the picnic table that spawns when you open up said picnic. And the thing is, this is why I hate the sandwiches so much, is because if you don't set up a sandwich, then you can sit there for like 20 minutes before even one egg appears in the basket. Whereas as soon as you activate the egg powers from the sandwiches, you can sit there for maybe about 3 minutes or so, and egg power 1 would probably spawn somewhere between 5 to 10 sandwiches on random. And if you set up the egg power level 2, then you can wait the full maybe 2 to 3 minutes, and you can usually get maybe 7 to 10 eggs right then and there. It's a lot faster. But each time you talk to the basket, the number of eggs is just randomly generated, so you can't really control it. So that's why the turbo button is not a viable strategy with it, because as I hit, it's randomized each time. So if you keep talking to the basket, no more eggs will be generated, so you're just wasting your time. And trust me, people have tried it. But just the hassle is that the basket can only hold up to 10 eggs at any given time. So let's say you left your game on, you just forgot about what you were doing, and you went past 3 minutes, and you're wasting your egg timer on the sandwich. So your basket essentially has 10 eggs, and it can't get any more after that. So that's one of the reasons why I despise breeding this game so much, because that little limitation. Because sometimes because essentially if you just want to grab nothing but eggs for the full 30 minutes, you're going to be sitting in the picnic in front of your basket for the entire 30 minutes, doing nothing else but just checking every few minutes for just new eggs. So you can essentially just watch a TV show, maybe do something else on a Nintendo Switch. That's what I usually do. I do maybe do some breeding and Sword and Shield on my Switch Lite or something. It's just a whole mess. But still, as usual, in terms of breeding, the main mechanics are still all there. With one little change, they added a new item known as the Mirror Herb. You can still pass on egg moves the old-fashioned way, but the Mirror Herb is an easier way to get egg moves. Say, for example, one of the more popular ways of getting, say, Belly Drum onto a Zoomerol was to essentially, say, put a Pokemon on your team, maybe Hariyama or Iron Hands. They can learn Belly Drum, then you give a Zoomerol the item called the Mirror Herb, and then you just go into the summary page, make sure to use the option to delete a move so it has an open move slot. Then you open a picnic, and then you can just close the picnic immediately after that, and then you can just look into a Zimmerl summary page, and we'll have learned the move Belly Drum, because that's the compatible move that he was trying to learn from the other Pokemon in your party. And you guys have to make sure all the Pokemon are in your party when this happens. And I should also mention this earlier, all the stuff I said about the summary page, all the additions and whatnot. In the earlier versions of the game, you can only do that when the Pokemon in your party, which was very annoying. So in a later update, they changed it so you can do it when the Pokemon was still in your PC boxes, because originally you had to move Pokemon out of your PC into your party, and then you had to close out the boxes and go to actual main menu, because the main menu opens up not just the main menu, but also your Pokemon party at the same time, so it's much faster to access your kind of things. I kind of like how they do the main menu in Scarlet. It kind of reminds me of like MMORPG style kind of thing, which was pretty nice. And another little bug that the game also had in its early days was the fact that if you traded a Pokemon out of the game and then you traded it back, if it was over your level cap, meaning if you don't have enough gym badges, then normally how it would work is that any Pokemon who's a higher level would disobey you if you don't have the necessary number of badges, because most people would, like, say, start a new game on one file, trade it over to another save file, get to level 100 over there, then send it back over to the main game so they can sweep faster. Unfortunately, there was a bug in the game that prevented that, meaning that if you did that and you sent it back, the Pokemon would no longer obey you, which was rather annoying. But apparently Game Freak stated that this was actually a bug, not a feature, because we thought it was a bug that was in the game to prevent that very scenario, but it was actually a bug, so they fixed it. Among other things, there were tons of early game bugs, as per usual. But that was one particular bug that we were not really fans of. But enough about all that stuff. I've been talking about all these different features in the game and whatnot. But what about the actual main story? The real draw of the game? Because, oh boy, Game Freak really altered this. Well, not, I wouldn't say alter, but up the story. Because while there are still the 8 gym battles, which is based off of the Victory Road storyline, as they like to call it, which includes the 8 gym battles. Then you go to the Elite Four, defeat the champion. But that one's pretty much just like the most plain of all the storylines, in my opinion, because you don't really interact with those characters as much, so it's not really as fun per se. Especially as the Elite Four and champion, you only battle them once. Like, you go to the Pokemon League, you battle the Elite Four and champion there just once, and then you just pretty much just end the Victory Road storyline there. It's just very underwhelming. But the way that they implemented the other 2 storylines, the Path of Legends and Starfall Street, I like the stories there much better. Especially Starfall Street. I don't know, I just kind of resonate with that one a bit more. But as for the Path of Legends, that's the one where you get your movement abilities, your HM moves. Because when you go through the opening tutorial stuff, 3 different characters essentially task you with these 3 different storylines that you can follow. Like Nemona, she entices you to take on the gyms for Victory Road. Arvin requests you to help him with the Path of Legends. And then a mysterious person known as Cassiopeia asks you to assist with Starfall Street, essentially handling the somewhat out of control Team Star, the supposed evil organization of the region, but they're not really evil. Game Freak seems to be really moving away from that.
How come you're not taking a break?
I already took my break.
You did?
Yes.
It's already another hour.
And I'm recording FYI. Excuse me, guys, gotta take care of something. That's why I don't like my current setup. I gotta deal with people interrupting me when I'm trying to do stuff. Phone calls I can deal with. But as I was talking about the storylines, Path of Legends, that's how you unlock all the movement abilities, which, funny enough, people have been screaming for Game Freak to the HMs, the hidden machines from the game for quite some time, since Generation 7 or so, and they've done their best to do so. And yet they managed to find a way to sneak them in via the Herba Mystica, which are 8 items that you find via the Path of Legends. You take down the Titans, they eat an Herba Mystica to gain some kind of a power boost. And then you have to battle them again alongside Arvin to take them down permanently. Then he finds another Herba Mystica, he feeds it to his sick Pokemon to make it feel better, and that's the whole Path of Legends side. Well, not side, but story segment. And in Starfall Strait, you have to track down the 5 Team Star bases around the Paldea region, take down their leaders, and just kind of convince them to disband and go back to school because they're essentially delinquents from the academy. Or rather, they're not really delinquents per se, but misunderstood bullies. Their organization just grew out of control. They were, the leaders of Team Star were originally getting bullied by students, and then they banded together to get revenge on said bullies just so they weren't being oppressed by them anymore, and then they got assumed that they were the actual bullies. So the big boss eventually just kind of left Paldea to study abroad for a while, hoping things would cool down. Then when she comes back, she sees things that have gotten way out of hand, so now she asks us to handle things. And I would say spoiler at this point, but considering that this game's been out for like 8 months, I'm pretty sure everyone knows this main story by now, so I don't think I'm really spoiling anything. And it is revealed that the main boss of Team Star, Cassiopeia's real name is actually Penny. So then eventually the end game of the story then goes to Area Zero, where you team up with Nemona, Arvin, Penny, alongside the main character. You then travel down to Area Zero to just learn the truth about the game, and I'm not going to say much more about that because the story's a little disheartening, probably one of the most tragic ones in terms of main characters outside of the Pokemon themselves. But I gotta say, I really love the whole final boss rush, except for the fact that Area Zero, let's just say I got lost here for quite a while, because by the time Christmas came, I was still stuck in Area Zero, because I just couldn't figure out where the blasted first research station was. But once I found the first one, finding the other 3, and then the Zero Lab was, well, it wasn't easy. It still takes me a while. Like, the last time I went through Area Zero, it took me like a full day worth of playing to finish off the Area Zero side story segment. So that is too bad they were going to deal with. But then once you get to the post game, this where Scar and Violet really kind of kicks its teeth in, I suppose, because post game wise, all they really do is tell you that 5-star raids are unlocked for terror raids, because as you get more gym badges, you unlock more terror raids. You start off with 1 and 2 star, you gain 3 badges, you unlock 3 star. I think you unlock 6 or 7 badges or so, you unlock the 4 stars. And then once you get to endgame, after you see the credits, which by the way, the song Celestia is awesome. I would sing that myself if not for copyright issues. But then once you're in post game, you have to see all the credits, you unlock 5 stars, and then you just go on this whole long-winded quest of taking out all the 8 gym leaders again. Then you do the Ace tournament, that unlocks the 6-star raids. And then you need, I think you have to take down 10 6-star raids or so before you unlock 7 stars or something. I forget how it works. But beyond the raids themselves, you then have to deal with the rest of post game, which doesn't really amount to much, in all honesty, because there's nothing to do in post game. There's no battle tower, which is how usually people would test their competitive skills in Pokemon. But since there's no battle tower, there's no place to buy battle items, because there's no battle points to speak of. So instead, essentially, you can just find a bunch of stores throughout the game in the 3 major big cities, which are Mesagosa, Levincia in the east, and then Cascarava in the west. You can find a store called Deli for Presents. You can pretty much buy all the battle items you need for competitive battling at each of these stores, although they can get pretty pricey. So because of that, the Ace tournament, you can get in the post game. You can just keep battling there over and over again. With the Amulet coin, you can grind out a lot of money that way. Or you find a bunch of terror raids online somewhere that drops a bunch of ability patches. You can sell those ability patches for lots of money as well. Like I have a particular acquaintance who has like, oh, he's participating in so many terror raids. He has like over 500 ability patches, so he's not going to be hurting for money anytime soon. Which is rather very funny because if you look at ability patches in Sword and Shield where they debuted, I think they sold for only like $10. Not well, they only sold for like $10. So the fact they now sell for like 150,000, yeah, I think they increased in value. And then after that, if you want to Hyper Training was also altered in Scarlet and Violet. Like previously, you needed Pokemon to level 100 before you could use bottle caps to Hyper Train them. Now that so the Pokemon have to be level 50 at least, so that's a nice upgrade to save people some time. And then just the fact that terror raids are rather easy and plentiful to get to and deal with. You can grind experience candy from there, although I mean, grinding for experience candy has always been time consuming, so it's not really that big of a deal. Although terror raids, one change from Sword and Shield about terror raids is just the fact that capture rates are now 100% no matter what. So that's just like how they were in Dynamax Adventure, so that's definitely an improvement that everyone was happy with. Although speaking of terror raids, I should note that the 7-star raids can tend to be a bit more harder and challenging. I mean, that's the whole point of 6 and 7 stars, they're more challenging. But the way they changed them in Scarlet and Violet was just the fact that Pokemon have more HP on the higher the star difficulty is. And on top of that, they also start setting up shields. They can remove any stat changes they have themselves. They can negate any stat changes on the Pokemon as well as negate your abilities. They can become more annoying, so relying on stat boosts or stat debuffs on the opponent is very important for those raids, like say screeches, metal sounds, acid sprays, and then on your own Pokemon maybe like nasty plots and sword dances. Also just being sure you send the Pokemon that are not weak to the Pokemon's original stat typing, like say let's see, he went up against the current rate at this point in time, like Gimmighoul, who's a ghost type Pokemon. Don't think he has any really damaging moves. But say you go up against like a ghost, a psychic terror like a psychic terror Gimmighoul. Don't just send it a ghost type because well, yes, ghost is super effective on psychic. It's still weak to Gimmighoul's original ghost typing, so that's a bad idea. Instead, you want to send like a dark type because that's resistant to both psychic and ghost, and it's super effective on psychic, who's the current terror type, because that's what the terror rate is. So that's how you counter that kind of scenario. So just be mindful about those. People have always been giving warnings about that, but even after all this time, people are either not listening, or they're just ignoring, or they just don't care. Either way, just as long as we just send out the word out there to inform people of these facts, the less hassle we have to do with the random people just doing random things during these terrors. Because I think we're really getting the feeling that we're facing more trolls than we are actually helpful people. But even as we speak, to mention Gimmighoul is the current spotlight raid, I think is what they're referred to as. But also, there's also like every 2 weeks or so, there's also like a 7-star raid that occurs that's usually based on like a starter Pokemon. Like we began with Charizard, then we went to more of them, maybe like I believe we had Cinderace next after that. Then I think there was like a Pikachu one. And then we had a bunch of other starters like the Hisuian ones. I mean, they weren't Hisuian forms, but they were still based on them. Like we had the Sidgewai, Typhlosion, Samurott raids. And there's a couple other ones, like I already mentioned, like Cinderace, and then there's Inteleon, so 2 of the 3 Galar starters. We've had a Greninja one, so that's one of the Kalos starters. I think Delphox is the one that's upcoming next soon. Then we also had Chestnut. And then last but not least, after they deal with Delphox, which has been delayed, FYI. I mean, it's been delayed, but it should be coming out relatively soon. By the time you guys hear this podcast, we might already have Delphox incoming. And after that, we just have Rillaboom to finish off the Galar starters, which I can't wait. I already bred Shiny, Sobble, and Scorbunny and Beast Balls in Sword and Shield, but after transferring it back over, so I can't wait to do that for Grookey as well. Oh yes, actually let's talk about home transferring because now Pokemon Home has been updated to allow for trades and well not trades but transferring Pokemon, and there's even backward compatibility, so you can take Pokemon from Scarlet and Violet and transfer them back to the other Switch games. You can as long as they're available in those respective Pokedexes only though, so you can't just take like a Hisuian Zoroark and like transfer it over to Sword and Shield, even though the original Zoroark is in Sword and Shield, but not the Hisuian one is not programmed in there, so you can't do that one. But if you did like regular Zoroark or Zoroark from Scarlet and Violet, you can then transfer them to Sword and Shield. Or say if you did like Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, you can take like the Garchomp line, transfer them back and forth between there. Although big warning for the transferring system though. If you change the Pokemon's ability using an ability capsule or ability patch, and you transfer it to another game, Pokemon Home will no longer memorize the fact that you did change the ability. So whatever the ability originally was, then it'll just change it back to being whatever it was when you transferred into the new game. So say for example, you had like a Charizard with his Blaze ability in Scarlet and Violet, and you used an ability patch to change it to Solar Power, and you transferred it to like Sword and Shield or Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, it would change it back to Blaze in those games. So you have to use the ability patch in those games to change it to back having Solar Power again. Or let's say it had Solar Power and then you use the ability patch to change it to Blaze and back and forth, and then just it's a whole mess. And on top of that, movesets also change depending on what game you send them to. And their abilities will, their movesets will change depending on the Pokemon's level. So that's another irritant for home transferring. But any IVs, hyper training, effort values, nature mints, these will all carry over from one game to another. So at least those are tracked at the very least. So one thing I like to do is like I get a bunch of Pokemon trained and leveled up and all that stuff in Sword and Shield, because getting them ready there is much easier and more cost efficient, because things can get very expensive in Scarlet and Violet, whereas getting all that stuff available in Sword and Shield is much faster and easier. I just get them handled it, and once they're all set up, besides their movesets, because that will just change anyway, I then transfer them over to Scarlet and Violet. Then in Scarlet and Violet, I just alter their moveset as needed for whatever situation they need to be in. So that's how I like to handle Pokemon Home at the moment. Other than the fact that this is probably my time to plug in the fact that I have a special Pokemon Home account in which anyone who has been decided to kindly pledge $1 on my account, I shall have a link down in the description below to all my social medias, including Patreon, in which they said home accounts I have all of the living dexes from all the Switch Pokemon games, but while I'm still working on Legends Arceus, I have a friend who's helping out with that one, and Scarlet Violet is pretty much almost completed. I'm just missing Gimmighoul, the 4 Ruination Pokemon, and the box of Paradoxes missing from there, so that's like 7 Pokemon, but beyond that, everything else in there is ready to go. Although if you're willing to touch trade for the rest of those Pokemon, I can do touch trades if necessary. I'm usually pretty, due to my current staff, I'm not really active on Discord, but I can still at least message with you guys, and then maybe we can like set up an appointment, and we can just do touch trades that way. But yeah, for terms like Sword and Shield, Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, and Let's Go Eevee Pikachu, I have all the living dexes in there to help you get your shiny charms much faster and easier for those respective games. With the exception of BDSP, because, well, Spinda just can't be put into the game, so instead I just have to either touch trade you one or something or other. It just depends on your preference. Like I could breed and send you guys a bunch of Spindas when inside the confines of BDSP itself, but or just touch trade them, whatever your preference is. But let's see. Oh yeah, another thing in Scarlet and Violet are the watchtowers. Like there are a bunch of watchtowers you can encounter throughout the course of the game. This is where you can find the Gimmighoul Pokemon, the chess Pokemon you can just find in chests and whatnot. At the top of most watchtowers, when you defeat them, you then get like a bunch of Gimmighoul coins, but you need 999 of these Gimmighoul coins in order to evolve said Gimmighoul, which can be really irritating, but if you are consistent about it, you know what you're doing, you know all the watchtowers are, you know where to track down a bunch of Pokemon and whatnot, then getting 199 can probably take you maybe like an hour or so. Beyond that, though, there are also the 32 mysterious stakes that are scattered around the Paldea region. There are 4 groups of them into 8 different colorations, and once you track them down, you can then go into these like special ruin areas where you can battle the ruination Pokemon, which are essentially like I don't know, I mean, they're called the ruination Pokemon, so apparently they did something bad in the past and then people sealed them away in these locations. But then once you find all the stakes associated with those respective seals, you can then battle and catch them for yourself. And these Pokemon all have abilities that lower a stat in one way, shape, or form. Like one lowers the attack stat of all of the Pokemon in the field, one lowers the defense, one lowers special attack, one lowers special defense, and it's for all other Pokemon in the field, including yourself, your partner. So it can be both either helpful or contradictory depending on which scenario you're in. Although the question is, how do you find out where these locations are? Because the locations of these 4 seals are not initially on your map, unless you just somehow just stumble across them while you're just traveling around. But considering how large the overworld map is, the odds of you just randomly stumbling upon these seals is highly unlikely, except I did this one time. I just found one seal by accident because I was just running around aimlessly just taking out wild Pokemon via the auto battle method. But how you do that is via the academy classes, which is something, a bit of side content you can do. They're not really all that helpful taking on the classes because only thing you get as a reward is a small amount of experience candy. But the stuff you can do after you complete the classes is usually more helpful. Although some of them can be interesting to look over, like biology class. I think that teaches you about like the shiny odds in the game, so that's could be considered useful. And then like the history class, once you finish the history class, you can find the teacher throughout the academy grounds. You just track them down, keep talking to them, and eventually they'll reveal to you the locations as to where all the seals are for the ruination Pokemon on the map. Although they won't be unlocked, you still have to set the destination on your map and then travel to them physically in order to unlock their flight points. But once you reach those areas for the first time, then you can fight them anytime you want. And then if you complete all the language classes and you talk to the professor after that, they then will gift you a Galarian Meowth, which is the only way you can get it in the game before all this transferably stuff was available via Pokemon Home. So that was nice to have because having Berserker on the team for certain raids was very beneficial. But other than that, clearing all the other classes, which come in 2 stages. There's always a midterm and a final. And there's not really much incentive to do all the classes, but if you're a completionist, then they could take a little while. It's not terribly difficult, but definitely time consuming. Some of them are interesting, some of them weren't. But the fact they threw in those classes and they actually threw in actually relevant like Pokemon information that can actually teach you some stuff was a nice touch in my opinion. Nice way to actually learn more about the world of Pokemon if you actually want to take the time to learn about all that stuff. But in terms of other content throughout the game, one of the biggest ones that was added in that made Pokemon really feel like it was becoming more of an MMORPG kind of thing was the Union Circle, which once you set it up, you can invite up to 3 other players, for a group of 4 players in total, to essentially you can just run around Paldea, do whatever you like together. The biggest thing is like, let's say you're playing Violet like I usually am, and you have like someone else who's playing Scarlet. If they go to a particular area, they can then spawn a bunch of Scarlet exclusive Pokemon into their game, and then after they spawn them in, you can then travel to the same area that they're in, and then you can actually see said Scarlet exclusive Pokemon on your screen. Then you can catch them for yourself. Just be careful though, because if you're just traveling around their overworld and you're running from a Pokemon, they do not despawn. But if you're in Union Circle, these Pokemon despawn when you run, so be careful about that. Although Union Circles can be funny because if someone finds it shiny and then that said shiny appears on your screen, you can technically just encounter said shiny and snipe it for yourself. Just don't run from it, because if you do, you despawn said shiny and everyone will be mad at you. Oh, it'll be funny just to see them rage at the fact that you did run. Not fun for yourself because you probably destroy your friend group there, but I don't know, crazy content or something. But the other usage for the unit circles, because one Pokemon in particular, which I think this is probably what I'd like to refer to as the region's convoluted evolution mechanic, because almost every region likes to have one. Like in Kalos, you need to turn your 3 days upside down to evolve Inkay to Malamar. In Generation 8, you need to have your Galarian Yamask take, I think it's like 39 points of damage from a single attack. Then you need to walk under a certain rock in the Dustyble area of the wild area in order to evolve to Rodriguez. Here, you just need to take the Pokemon Finnison into a Union Circle, make sure that another player is nearby, leveled up and evolve it when they are watching, and it'll evolve to Palafin. Which is rather annoying. I mean, you can find Palafin in 6-star raids, but the odds of that happening are pretty low, especially since in this game you cannot control what Pokemon appear in the Terror raids, because unlike in Sword and Shield, where you can like toss Wishing Piece items to cause the max raid ends to spawn, in this game they just appear randomly on the map. You can essentially skip forward your day in order to force the dens to spawn and despawn and all that stuff if you want to just stay in one place over and over again. Because sometimes the raids will appear, sometimes they won't. It's just random, so the odds you find something you want is pretty minuscule, but if that's something you want to do, then you can. And then, let's see, oh yeah, one of the more recent updates to the game was the fact that for the Pokemon Vivillon, originally you can only find its fancy form in Paldea, which used to be an event exclusive form for Vivillon, so the fact that they made the fancy form Paldea regional exclusive was a nice touch, but then what about all the other Vivillon forms? Well, this is where Pokemon Scarlet and Violet really opens up compatibility with the rest of the Pokemon franchise, in this case specifically Pokemon Go, because if you play a bunch of Pokemon Go, you can get a bunch of postcards in the game. Essentially, you can then send these postcards into Scarlet and Violet, and then depending on where in the world these postcards came from, you can then just alter the Vivillon patterns that appear in your game, and then you have the next like 24 hours to then hunt that Vivillon as you please, whether it's shiny or non-shiny, you want to catch whatever ball you desire. So yeah, that's how you eventually just get all the Vivillon patterns, where some areas of the game are more rare than others, and considering there are 18 other patterns besides the fancy one you can get in the game, it can definitely take some time to acquire them all, especially since just going to Pokemon Go and just trying to acquire all these postcards is already hassle enough. I remember the first week when the update came out, I believe it was back in February after the Pokemon Day, Pokemon Presents. I tried staying up all night to listen to that particular presentation, but I failed considerably, but I still watched it with my friends, and it was a nice reveal. But as of this point, that's pretty much all the main tidbits of information that I have written down I can think of for Scarlet and Violet at this point in time. I mean, like, the Pokedex itself is massive. Enough already, and then you add all these transferable Pokemon via Pokemon Home. Like, you can transfer a bunch of legendary Pokemon, like, say, the Kanto and Galarian versions of the birds, the Ho and Weather Trio, all like the Hisuian forms of Pokemon from Legends Arceus, including the legendaries from there, like Dialga, Palkia, Giratina, Arceus himself. I like Hoopa from Generation 6. Mythical is finally back in the game. You can transfer in any starter Pokemon that are already coded into the game, including the Hisuian starters. The Greninja is already back in the game, so you can transfer that one in. Chestnut's there, so I'm pretty sure you can transfer that one. Delphox, you can also be now transferred in as well, even though the 7-star year rate hasn't occurred yet. And let's see, out of Unova, only the Oshawott line can be currently in. Same goes for Johto, only Cyndaquil line, and then for Alola, only the Rowlet line, although eventually, once the DLC comes, here's a bit of a spoiler alert, but from my understanding, essentially all the starter lines, like the full starter lines for like Kanto, Johto, Hoenn, Sinnoh, Unova, Kalos, Alola, and Galar will all be fully available within the confines of Scarlet and Violet. So this will be the first Pokemon game since Generation 7 in which all starters might be actually available for usage within the confines of a single Pokemon game, which is crazy because in terms of the sheer Pokedex size, like say for example, just take one generation starter, so that's 3 Pokemon, and each one has 3 stages each. Well, 3 stages of evolutions. The base formed into 2 stages evolutions. So that's 9 spaces on the Pokedex right there. Then times that by 9 for 9 generations. That's 81 spaces of Pokemon. That right there, that's going to be available when DLC drops. So that's 81 right there, and there's like over 1,000 Pokemon in the Pokedex. That's almost 10% of the Pokedex that's going to be available in Scarlet and Violet is exclusively just for the starters themselves. That is pretty massive. And I'm not going to spoil any other Pokemon I'd be transferring in, but I'm actually very excited because for those of you who know me, I love catching Pokemon in Beast Balls. And with the transferable Pokemon that they will be bringing back, I'm very happy because it'll allow me to just complete my Beast Ball living dex for those particular species of Pokemon. But yeah, that's essentially my whole spiel about talking about Scarlet and Violet before DLC comes out. And I apologize, my voice sounds a bit scratchy, but I have been talking for like the past hour or so non-stop, so without so much as a real water break, so yeah, that's pretty much all I have really to say on the topic. I hope you enjoy these little screenshots I've just been boosting across the screen. I don't know why I took so many screenshots as I played through Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, as I played through the game. I forget what a bunch of these screenshots even were, though I think most of them were mostly just taking screenshots of a lot of the Paldea Dex Pokemon as I obtained them, because I just thought some of their Dex entries were cool, and I just felt like recording the memories as I completed my Paldea Dex for the first time. As well as a bunch of other screenshots of, like, say, this one of one of the Team Star base areas, or me just battling against Team Star leaders themselves. And I still don't understand why they ride on top of these like vehicles that. Wait, this is a gym leader battle. My bad. But yeah, Team Star leaders, they like ride on top of this like super evolved Revervroom or something, which is like a form exclusive you never can get yourself, which I find to be unfair, but oh well, what can you do? But yeah, if you guys like this podcast, then like, comment, subscribe, notification bell, and I'm hoping that with my current office setup, maybe I can record a podcast maybe once every other week or so. But if you guys want me to see if I can do this content more frequently for other stuff, maybe I can try going for a weekly schedule for podcasts, maybe upload a shorter one once a week or so. But for the big podcasts like this one discussing the Pokemon games themselves, I might just have to stick to the monthly formula for these ones. But then for the smaller podcasts, I can maybe discussing like a top 10 favorite list. I might go for a weekly upload for those ones. Look at this sweet little moment. This is the reason why I like these ones a bit more. These moments in cutscenes. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. And links down in the description to my social medias and whatnot. And well, I guess I'll see you all guys next time. Take care.